Hi, this is Edward Troxel. In today's tutorial, I wanted to go back and do some reviewing. I've had some questions about the code that you're giving me. Is that all the code that I need? Is there other stuff that needs to be in there to make it work? I can't seem to make it work with just that code. How do I save the file? What file name do I save it under? And all kinds of questions. So I want to make this kind of a review of some other things that are needed to go along with the code that I am giving you. Generally speaking, I am always going back to essentially the first video that we ever did almost 2 years ago. So if you haven't watched that video, I would recommend going back and watching that video. But I will go in and review kind of what that video is telling you and the extra code that when I give you some code on this tutorial, what extra stuff needs to go around it, how do I save it, and what do I do with it. So let's take a look at that. Here is the last tutorial that we did, and this is the basic code that I showed you because that is all the code that was necessary to make this particular task work, but it's not all the code we need to make the script actually run. This was the new stuff that needed to be added to the base code, and as you notice at the beginning of the tutorial, I mentioned that we're using the base class 1 that we started almost 2 years ago. So let's see what else is necessary for this code, because you can see we have more stuff up here and more stuff down here that's generally not being discussed from week to week because we discussed it nearly 2 years ago. So let's start at the top and work our way down. These are all the using statements. Are all of them necessary? No, they're not. These ones in the gray are not being used at all, but I found that these are typically the ones that get used most, so I just threw them all in there. Having the extra ones in there isn't hurting anything. Then you have to create a namespace. In this case, we have this one named test script. It doesn't have to be named test script. You can name it whatever you want to. So for this one, since we're opening a project, you could say namespace, open project. Then we come in down to a class 1. We have to have a class. It's a public class. It's named class 1 simply because this was the first class that was created in Visual Studio. Once again, we can rename this class to be anything we want. Maybe we want to call it get template or something like that, since that's what we're doing here. And then we have our public variable myVegas, which we are assigning as the first line of our main routine every time. Basically, this stuff right here, I haven't been discussing from week to week because it's all the same in every one of them. Then likewise, after we get done with this routine, unless we had some subroutines down below, I haven't discussed the 2 closing brackets or anything below that. So let's not go below this. This is our entry point. Every Vegas script must have an entry point. And so we are setting this one down here. And this is the line that we are using. Public void from Vegas, and we get a Vegas variable that we are calling Vegas. In a tutorial, we discussed this as an alternative. If you needed to get more information, it will send you also the script file name, script settings, and any script arguments, which once again we discussed in a previous tutorial. Generally speaking, this is the one you need most of the time. And then there is code inside here that it has to run. This test script right here, that's our namespace. So if you change the namespace up above, you have to change it here and here. This class 1, that is our class, which is listed up here. So if you change the class up here, then you have to change it here and here as well. This is just a variable name. It can be whatever you want it to be. But if you change it here, you also have to change it here. And once again, our routine we call main. That's a fairly common thing to do. But if you change it there, you would also have to change it here. So this is the full code that you would need to run any script. So start with the usings, come all the way down through the public main, and then add the code that we've been discussing here, and then make sure you have the rest of the code down below. So I hope this clears up the tutorials a little bit about the extra stuff that is needed. Once again, like I said, with this one, it happens to be saved as class1.cs. You could change the file name as well, and I would encourage you to change the file name as well, because you need to make it name something that you can easily identify. As far as the namespace and the class, that doesn't matter. You can leave it as test in class 1. It's not going to hurt for multiple scripts to have the same names there. So my recommendation is go in, look at the old tutorial, which once again shows everything that we put into this base script. Make sure you've got all the stuff above the code that we talk about in each given tutorial. Make sure you have the stuff after each given tutorial, and everything should then work fine. So I hope this helps. Subscribe and let me know what you'd like to see in the future. Please sign up at www.jettv.com and subscribe on YouTube to get further notifications on when new videos are presented.